Hey everybody, it's Jim from Cigars. If you're like me, you're always on the lookout for new cigars to try. But there's so many brands and so little time to smoke them that we tend to overlook some of the brands that might be worthwhile. And so I decided to do a little market research. And what I did, I went onto social media and I posed the question, what cigar brands do you think are overlooked that deserve more attention from cigar smokers? So that is a question I posed. And interestingly enough, I got a lot of repeat answers. And I picked out 5 of those that got repeated very often. And those are the 5 brands that I'm going to highlight today. So let's get started doing that. What we're going to talk about first are actually 2 labels that come out of the same factory. The factory being the Oveja Negra Fabrica in Nicaragua. And these are the Black Label Trading Company and Blackworks Studio. These have been around only since 2013, and what they're known for is making pretty small batches of about 100 boxes of the cigars that they make. And they do have a pretty broad line, but the ones that I would recommend in this line are for Black Label Trading, the Lawless and the Santa Muerte. For Blackworks Studio, I'd recommend the Killer Bee, of which I've actually had a couple and they're pretty good. And then also the Green Hornet, which is a similar cigar, only using a different tobacco. Next, let's talk about Eora and Clle. Again, they share in common, they're 2 labels made out of the same factory, which is the Eora factory in Honduras. And although it's only been around since 2012 in terms of these brands, the Eora family has actually been growing tobacco in Honduras since the 1800s. So they really know what they're doing. And Christian Eora, who is the guy who's really in charge of the blending for both Eora and Clle, has a really outstanding background because, believe it or not, the Eora family actually owned the Camacho brand from 1995 through 2008 when they sold it to Davidoff. So the strong suit of the Eora family really is Corojo tobacco. So some of the recommendations I'm going to make for these cigars include that Corojo. The first one I'd recommend is the Clle Plus Corojo. The second one is the Clle Prieto, which is a Connecticut broadleaf. In terms of Eora, they have the original Eora brand name is just Eora Cigars. I would definitely recommend that. And if you want to go a little deeper in that line, they have a newer brand called Eora the First 20 Years. Next, let's talk about the newest brand of all the ones we're going to talk about, and that's the Ozgener family cigars. They've only been around since 2022, and Tim Ozgener, who heads Ozgener Cigars, was actually in charge of CAO for a number of years. He left CAO about 10 years ago and took a hiatus, and now he's back in the cigar business with the Ozgener family cigar. Ozgener is distributed by Crown Heads, so it's very likely that you're going to be able to find them in your local cigar shop. Ozgener doesn't have a very big line, and what I would recommend would be the Bosphorus, which is an Ecuadorian Sumatra, or the Aramis, which was co-blended by E.P. Carrillo. And that is more of a full-bodied cigar with a San Andres wrapper. The next one we're going to talk about is kind of an exception because it's a pretty well-known brand, but also has been around a long time. And that is Joya de Nicaragua. But there's an interesting story behind that company. They were actually started in 1968 in Nicaragua. Many people call them the original Nicaraguan cigar company. But come 1979 with the Nicaraguan Revolution and the Sandinistas and all that, their factory got caught in the crossfire and got pretty much wiped out. So they were out of business from 1979 till 1992 when they brought in a new investor and rebuilt the factory. And more recently, they made a distribution deal with Drew Estate. So they're pretty easy to find in cigar stores and online and whatnot. My main recommendation for Joya de Nicaragua is the original Joya Antaño. And they've spun off that line because it was so popular. But the original Antaño would be a great entry point into the Joya de Nicaragua line if you're not familiar with it. Joya also has a red, silver, black line that is pretty good as well. So look for those if you haven't smoked them before and maybe give those a try. Last but not least, let's talk about Roma Craft. Roma Craft is actually a spin-off from a large tobacco store operation in Austin. And the fellow's name is Skip Martin. And he partnered with some people in Nicaragua, bought into a factory down there, and they started making the Roma Craft line back in 2012. They have a pretty wide line, and it's pretty well distributed. If you're looking for an entry point into the Romacraft line, I would recommend the Cro-Magnon Aquitaine, which is an Ecuadorian Habano wrapper, and it's very full-bodied. Or if you're looking for something lighter, the Intemperance is a good line of Connecticut cigars that I've actually had one of those and really liked it, although they're a little bit more in body than traditional Connecticut cigars. That's all I got today from Cigars, Cigars, Cigars. I will see you next time.